44 years ago, a high school girl in Sacramento left a school party and vanished without a trace, leaving her family and the city haunted by an unspoken dread. Police found scraps of fabric, a single shoe, but no body, no witnesses, and the case was quickly filed as missing without cause. Years later, when her name had faded from memory, a college student stumbled upon an old file in a forensic database. A misentered county code had buried the case in the system for 4 decades. She began tracing every fragment of data, unraveling a chain of events that stunned the Sacramento community as the past resurfaced from a seemingly harmless clerical error. Before we dive into this cold case, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love gripping true crime stories, don't forget to subscribe to catch the next episodes. Sacramento, fall of 1980. The suburban air was quiet after the previous night's rain, the wet streets reflecting golden streaks of light from the eucalyptus trees lining the road. At Hiram Johnson High School's auditorium, the welcome back dance had just ended, the last pop songs echoing faintly, mingling with the lively chatter of students dispersing to the parking lot. Among them was Maria Elena Cruz, 17, petite, her brown hair tied back neatly, wearing a pale green dress and a gray cardigan. She said goodbye to a few friends and headed toward the parking lot behind the sports complex. One friend recalled her smiling, saying she'd cut through the river path to cool off before heading home. A casual remark. No one thought it would be the last time they heard her voice. In the lot, cars started up and pulled away one by one. Headlights flashed across lingering puddles. Maria walked down a small path toward the American River Parkway, a quiet route at night, filled only with the hum of insects and distant cars from Watt Avenue Bridge. No one noticed her slip out of sight. The night passed calmly, like any other in sleepy, peaceful Sacramento. But in the small Cruz family home on Arden Way, the porch light stayed on all night. Maria's mother, Rosa, sat at the kitchen table, her coffee long gone cold, glancing at the window every few minutes. Maria often came home late, but never past midnight. By 3 a.m., the porch light still burned, the street silent except for the soft patter of rain on the awning. No car pulled up. At 6 a.m., Rosa walked to her daughter's room. The door was ajar, the bed untouched, blankets neatly folded, Maria's favorite jacket still hanging on the chair. On the dresser, a silver bracelet Maria wore that night sat neatly beside a small, ticking clock. In the kitchen, the wall clock struck 7 a.m., its second hand clicking harshly in the morning stillness. The phone stayed silent, no messages, no calls. A growing unease stretched each minute longer. Rosa stepped onto the porch, the early breeze carrying the scent of damp earth and the faint rumble of a garbage truck down the street. Nothing but wet pavement and cold, dripping trees. A gut feeling something was wrong drove her back inside. Her hands shook as she picked up the beige rotary phone, its curled cord worn. She took a breath, dialed the Sacramento Police Department, her voice breaking as the operator answered. "My daughter didn't come home last night." Maria's disappearance began in that moment, on an ordinary morning, in a quiet neighborhood where nothing ever seemed to happen. That morning, as the Cruz family's wall clock struck 8 a.m., 2 Sacramento Police Department officers knocked on the door. The desk officer who took Rosa's missing person report had escalated it to the missing persons unit. Lieutenant Mark Jensen, with nearly 20 years of experience, and young officer Linda Shaw stepped into the small house on Arden Way, where the air was thick with cold coffee and anxiety. On the kitchen table, a photo of Maria from her junior high graduation sat beside the phone, her radiant smile stark against the room's heavy silence. Jensen opened his notebook, asking when Rosa last saw her daughter. "Yesterday afternoon," she said. "She was going to the school dance. She took the car, wore a light green dress." Rosa answered, her voice trembling. Her statement matched information from the school. They called the vice principal's office, confirming Maria left the auditorium around 10 p.m., mentioning to friends she'd stopped by the river. A group of friends corroborated this, but no one saw her leave the lot. Jensen requested a list of all dance attendees, supervising teachers, and the night's security guard. He and Shaw drove to Hiram Johnson High. The parking lot behind the sports complex was empty, save for unfamiliar tire tracks in the soft dirt near the trees. No cameras. School surveillance wasn't installed in 1980. They measured and photographed the tracks, noting deep tire marks, possibly a small truck or heavy sedan. Back at the school, Jensen interviewed a student on duty, Robert Hill. He recalled seeing Maria walk toward Watt Avenue but wasn't sure if anyone was with her. "I just heard a car door slam, then headlights lit up the dirt lot," he said, hesitant. The detail was noted but inconclusive. They questioned two of Maria's female classmates, who insisted she had no conflicts or secret boyfriends. At the house, Shaw searched Maria's room. Everything was tidy: textbooks, uniform, a brown leather diary in the desk drawer. Wearing gloves, Shaw opened it. The final entries mentioned choir practice and named Mr. Whitaker, choir director. Nothing unusual, just notes about preparing for a performance the next week. In the closet, Shaw found an unpacked purse containing a receipt from Harris Market on Folsom Boulevard, timestamped 9:23 p.m. Jensen immediately sent officers to the store. Patrol Officer Reed spoke to the cashier, who remembered a young girl buying a soda and mints, heading back toward the school lot. No one saw her after that. The timeline emerged. Maria left the dance around 10 p.m., was at Harris Market from 9:29:30, then vanished while walking through the school's back lot. No witness confirmed a car or companion. Jensen mapped her likely route: school, Harris Market, American River Parkway entrance, home on Arden Way. Just over 5 miles, but no one saw her pass through that night. The team returned to Watt Avenue Bridge, where streetlights were dim and bushes lined the riverbank. They found faint small footprints, too vague for casts, and a soggy scrap of paper with faded text. Choir practice, Friday. Jensen tucked it into an evidence bag. By noon, he called a quick meeting at SPD headquarters. A preliminary timeline was presented: 10 p.m. Left dance, 10:15. At Harris Market, 10:30. Toward Watt Avenue, then unknown. The case was officially opened as missing person, Maria E. Cruz, Jensen stressed. No evidence of voluntary departure. Treat as a potential crime-related disappearance. The police chief approved expanding the search along the American River Parkway, from Discovery Park to Fair Oaks Bridge. Local patrols were ordered to scour riverbanks, bridges, and wild park areas, collecting reports of suspicious vehicles from September 13. That afternoon, Jensen returned to the Cruz home for more materials. He collected Maria's diary, contact list, and a student map marking choir practice routes. Rosa stood on the porch watching, eyes red but silent. As Jensen left, the initial report was nearly 30 pages. On the file's margin, he penciled, "No sign of voluntary disappearance. Further investigation required. Focus on school vicinity and river access." That evening, the first search team swept the river, where Maria said she'd stop to cool off. None knew the search would span nearly half a century. The next morning, Sacramento's sky was gray with mist, low clouds drifting over the American River. At 6 a.m., the Sacramento PD Search and Rescue Unit arrived at Watt Avenue Bridge, Maria's last known location. Lieutenant Mark Jensen pointed to a map spread on his Jeep's hood. The search covered over 4 miles of riverbank, from Discovery Park to Fair Oaks Bridge. The river was muddy, its current swift with rain-soaked debris and branches. Overhead, a police Bell 206 helicopter scanned the water with infrared cameras for anomalies. On the ground, 20 officers and 8 rescue workers split into small groups, wearing rubber boots, raking mud, and probing the banks. Radios crackled alongside wind and helicopter rotors in a monotonous rhythm. Near noon, a team reported an object floating near the east bank, a white women's sneaker, common brand. Jensen examined it. The leather was stained, laces torn, sole caked with sand. He bagged it, noting, "Found near Watt Avenue Bridge, 930 hours. Nearby, another officer found a small metal fragment caught in branches, a broken necklace chain, link scratched, but no pendant or engraving. The lab photographed, measured, and bagged it separately. Both items were sent to forensics that day. Jensen knew they proved little. Hundreds of students crossed the area weekly. A stray shoe or broken chain wasn't enough to link to Maria. Still, protocol demanded collection, description, analysis, and elimination. That afternoon, the police dive team deployed rubber boats, scanning the riverbed with sonar. The screen showed debris and logs, no bodies. Murky post-rain water reduced visibility to near zero. A veteran diver surfaced, shaking his head. Nothing but trash and branches. Jensen ordered the area from Watt Avenue to Discovery Park's old dock marked off. The evening report detailed water flow and speed, measured with test buoys, 1.2 knots eastbound. If an object fell into the river that night, it could have drifted miles downstream. Forensics calculated drift times for light items like shoes or bags 3 to 5 hours from Watt Avenue to Discovery Park based on 1,980 hydrological maps. These notes joined the growing file, technical but directionless. By day 3, the helicopter resumed parallel river flights with infrared, detecting no unusual heat signatures. Ground teams expanded to grassy lots by the levee, where homeless encampments stood. One man in a tent was questioned. "Did you see a girl pass by Friday night?" "No. Just heard cars drive by, then quiet." No one stopped. After 5 days, the evidence list was meager. A sneaker, broken chain, 2 wet fabric scraps of unknown origin. Forensics found no blood or hair. Negative test results filled the nearly 200-page file. That Friday evening, Jensen met with the team. All potential witnesses were questioned, all suspicious areas searched twice. No leads. No cameras. No one saw Maria after 10 p.m. The week's final report to the department read, "Search operation yielded no body, no definitive evidence linking found items to victim. Case remains unresolved." In the office, the American River map stayed pinned to the wall, red markers noting dive sites and search zones. Jensen added a final note. Status: suspended, no lead. Outside, night fell over Sacramento, the river's steady flow betraying no sign of anyone lost within it. A month after Maria's disappearance, the Sacramento Police Department's investigation office was buried in paperwork, field reports, and scene photos. Images of the cold, muddy riverbank littered the desk, each nearly identical mud, water, branches, no trace of the 17-year-old. Lieutenant Mark Jensen reviewed the evidence list one last time. A sneaker, chain fragment, 2 fabric scraps. Forensics confirmed no DNA or biological markers. No new witnesses, calls, or statements. "No lead," was scrawled in red on the file's margin. The search officially ended on day 32. Jensen signed the suspension order, sending the file to the chief with a brief note. No evidence of confirmed criminal activity. Victim status unverified. Local papers gave the case a small corner on page 3 of the Sacramento Bee. High school student missing. Cause unknown. The article, less than 2 paragraphs, had no photos or quotes. Maria E. Cruz's name passed like a minor note in the local incident section. The community moved on. Other schools prepped for winter exams, and in the police station, Maria's file joined hundreds of 1,982 missing person cases. Rosa Cruz visited the station weekly. Jensen saw her at the front desk a few times, always with the same question. "Any news yet?" The answer never changed. "Nothing new, Mrs. Cruz. We'll call if there is." Jensen knew the truth. The case had no active investigator. He'd requested it be marked, "awaiting new evidence," an administrative term for an inactive file, a way to close a case without saying closed. His final report, typed neatly, ended. No evidence confirms criminal activity. Victim remains missing, status unknown. File stored in Archive 4B, missing juveniles. Jensen signed and stamped it the 14th of October 1980. The file went into a yellow folder, labeled MECR 1980. At home, Maria's room remained untouched. A summer birthday card from a friend sat in her desk drawer. Rosa occasionally opened the door, dusted the desk, and changed water in a small vase. She didn't believe her daughter was gone forever. but had no one left to ask. The phone stopped ringing, leaving only the sound of wind and the ticking clock marking frozen time. Jensen turned in his temporary assignment badge for Maria's case and moved to an armed robbery unit. Her file joined the unresolved stack. He folded his suspended, no-lead note into the half-inch thick file, stored in a metal cabinet. When the cabinet door shut, the metallic clang marked the case's descent into oblivion. Winter arrived, Sacramento grew cold. Rain fell heavily, the American River swelling, carrying away debris, branches, and remnants of the futile search. Some of Jensen's team moved to other assignments. Maria Cruz's name faded from mention. Only the case code ME. CR 1980 lingered in the department's digital list, among hundreds of names never found. In the SPD's 1981 quarterly summary, the case got one line. Case #80 471. Missing person. Juvenile. Suspended due to lack of evidence. No notes. No recommendation for reinvestigation. For the bureaucracy, it was over. But in Jensen's personal notebook, he kept an old sketch, the American River map with red ink, marking the sneaker and chain locations. Sometimes, he'd glance at it for a moment, then close it. All evidence suggested Maria left Sacramento that night, but no one knew how, or if she was alive. And so, Maria E. Cruz's file was sealed, awaiting a lead that never came. In March 1981, nearly 6 months after Maria's case was shelved, the American River's water level dropped after heavy rains. 2 men from Citrus Heights, Alan Pierce and Tom Becker, brought fishing rods and a small cooler of beer, setting up camp near a bend east of Watt Avenue Bridge, a spot rarely visited due to soft, deep mud. Around 10 a.m., as Becker reeled in his line, he noticed something protruding from the mud. At first, he thought it was a waterlogged branch, but when Pierce approached, the mud flaked away, revealing a round, white shape gleaming in the weak sunlight. They froze for a few seconds. Pierce prodded it with a stick, feeling a hollow density, then turned to Becker. "Tom, I think that's a human bone." They left the area quickly, calling police from a payphone at a nearby gas station. 15 minutes later, 2 Sacramento Police Department vehicles arrived. Lieutenant Mark Jensen, now in the criminal division but once assigned to Maria's case, was dispatched with a forensic team. They cordoned off the riverbank with yellow tape, setting up temporary barriers. River wind carried a cold, muddy scent. A technician knelt, rinsing the dirt with distilled water. The callers were right. A human skull, its forehead and cheekbones intact, lower half missing, surrounded by scattered fragments of arm and wrist bones. Jensen stood a few feet away, watching. "Female, age unclear," forensic expert Dr. Charles Lerner said quickly after examining the bone structure and tooth wear. Based on the bones, likely female, under 25. He ordered a 10-meter radius search. 2 technicians marked the area, digging carefully in the wet soil. Within 2 hours, they recovered 4 more small bone fragments, a rotted fabric scrap tangled in roots, and a dull, round metallic object. Lerner picked it up with tweezers, rinsing it. "Lead bullet, .38 caliber," he said, bagging it. No one spoke further. Only the camera's clicks, scribbling pens, and water lapping the shore filled the silence. By afternoon, the scene was fully secured. Park police kept onlookers at bay. Reporters, held back over 100 meters, couldn't approach. One asked Jensen, "Could this be a homicide?" He didn't answer, only stating, "We haven't identified the remains." The skull was wrapped in an anti-static bag, sealed as JD 80-104, Jane Doe, number 4, of 1,981, and sent to the Sacramento County Coroner's Office. At the coroner's office, Dr. Lerner conducted a preliminary examination. Under the surgical light, he pointed out a perfect circular wound on the right occipital region. At the back of the skull, a clear sign of a bullet's path. Inside, the bone edges flared outward, indicating a close-range shot, right to left. One clean shot, straight through. This wasn't an accident, he told Jensen, who was taking notes nearby. Definitely a homicide. The lower jaw was missing, possibly carried off by animals or buried deep in the mud. The remaining bones suggested a height of about 5'1" to 5'3", lightweight, with no prior fractures. Soil samples around the bones were collected for microbial analysis to estimate time of death. Initial results: the body had been there for roughly 4 to 6 months, aligning with Maria Cruz's disappearance. But Jensen didn't voice this theory. He knew coincidence wasn't enough without biological evidence or personal items. Moreover, Maria's case was closed, and the department lacked a system to automatically cross-reference missing persons with unidentified remains. The next day, a brief report aired on KCRA Channel 3. Sacramento police discovered human remains near the American River Parkway, believed to be female. The coroner's office is working to identify them. The news lasted 30 seconds, with no mention of Maria Cruz. To the public, it was just another nameless body in flood season. In the lab, Lerner and his assistant cataloged each bone, taking precise measurements and photos. He noted, even teeth, 6 silver fillings, good nutritional status, no bone pathology. This suggested the victim was middle class, with access to dental care unlike typical homeless cases. Jensen read the preliminary findings, tapping his pen on the desk. If we had dental records, we could match them. But a query to the state archives returned. No matching data. DNA testing was still futuristic. Dental records were the only identification method. After 3 days, Dr. Lerner signed the preliminary report. Gender: female. Age: 16, 23. Height: approximately 5'2". Cause of death: gunshot wound to the head. Manner: homicide. Identity: unidentified. Case status: pending dental comparison and missing persons reports. The file was sent to the chief investigator's office. Jensen typed the final line on his gray IBM typewriter. Case opened under temporary designation. Jane Doe 80, 104. Location: East bank of American River, near Watt Avenue. Homicide suspected. He paused before signing, his gaze lingering on the wall-mounted map where he'd once marked the spot of Maria's shoe, less than a mile away. He said nothing, folded the file, and handed it to the clerk. Send to the coroner. Priority 2, he said. The metal filing cabinet closed with a cold, final clank. Outside, the river flowed on, as if it held no secrets, but in Sacramento's archives, a new case was born: Jane Doe 8104. On the 18th of March 1981, the Sacramento County Coroner's Office completed the detailed autopsy in the second-floor morgue of the old building on Freeport Boulevard. White light poured onto the cold metal table, where the remains coded Jane Doe 8104 were neatly arranged in sterile trays. Chief Coroner Dr. Charles Lerner, with 2 technicians, examined every bone recovered from Watt Avenue: skull, occipital bone, radius, ulna, and fragmented femur pieces. They began with the skull, where a bullet hole, round as a drill mark, pierced the right occipital region. Lerner tilted the lamp, using a magnifying glass to reveal star-like fracture lines, typical of a close-range gunshot. He measured, noting, entry wound diameter 0.36 inches, probable. 38 caliber projectile. Exit wound, left temporal region. A technician photographed each angle with a 35mm camera, then numbered and sealed the film. The cheekbones and upper jaw, intact, allowed facial proportion estimates. Lerner used a craniometer, calculating height around 5'2", plus or minus 2 centimeters, age 16 to 20, based on bone fusion and teeth. The dental profile showed 6 silver fillings, healthy enamel, no signs of malnutrition, a clue the girl had regular medical care. All notes went into the standard NFS 12 form. Female, estimated age 16, 20, height 5'2", cause of death, single gunshot wound to the head. Lerner ordered X-rays of all remains to check for other metal objects. The films, lit on a light box, showed the bullet's clear path, right to left, 15-degree angle through the skull, no secondary wounds. One shot, no struggle, Lerner said. his voice low but firm. He glanced at Jensen, observing through the glass, silently noting. "What do you think?" Lerner asked. Jensen replied, "If it was an accident, someone would have reported it by now." The answer was enough for both to agree. This was a homicide. Soil samples from the bones went to the state forensic lab for microbial analysis to assess decomposition conditions. Days later, results confirmed the body lay in the mud for 4 to 6 months, matching September-October of the previous year, when Maria Cruz vanished. But without identification evidence, police couldn't assign a name. Jensen requested a cross-check with missing persons lists, sending a query to California DOJ's data center. 3 days later, the response was curt. No match found. No hits in county or state records. Lerner continued identification via dental records, sending tooth samples to Sacramento area dental offices for comparison. Copies went to 16 clinics. None recognized the silver fillings. No name, no family, no trace. Jane Doe, 8104, became truly nameless. The final report stated, "Identification pending. Remains classified as unidentified female victim." Jensen, though no longer directly assigned, visited the coroner's office for updates. He studied the X-ray films, the skull's dark bullet hole stark on the lightbox. He recalled the river map in his office, the shoe and necklace found last year, less than a mile from the skull's location. But official reports barred linking the cases without physical evidence. All he had was a hunch. On March 25, Lerner finalized the comprehensive report. Stamp Times Final Report. Coroner's Office, Sacramento County ***. The first page read, Victim, female, unidentified. Age, 16, 20. Height, Bishiki, 3 cm. Cause of death, gunshot wound to the head. Weapon, 38 caliber handgun. Time of death, estimated 4-6 months prior to discovery. Manner of death, homicide. Decomposition stage, late, skeletal remains. Identification status, unidentified. Attached were 12 scene photos, 4 X-rays, 2 forensic charts, and a bag containing the bullet extracted from the skull. Evidence was transferred to SPD's evidence room, coded to match Jane Doe 8104. Lerner sealed the file, labeled it Unidentified Remains, and signed the transfer. He asked Jensen, "Think anyone will claim her?" Jensen paused, then said, "Not unless we find her first." A week later, the remains were released for burial. Per protocol, unidentified victims unclaimed after 60 days were interred at Sacramento County's Potter's Field Cemetery, for those without kin or names. On the 2nd of April 1981, a simple wooden coffin was lowered into a plot in row 3, beside a small stone marker etched only with female, 1980, 1, unidentified. As Jensen signed the final paperwork, he read the file's last line, Case status, closed pending identification. Administratively, it was now unidentified, meaning no unit would pursue it without new data. A nameless girl, shot once with a .38 caliber handgun, 5'2", about 17, rested in an unmarked grave, reduced to a few lines in Sacramento County's cold archives. After the unidentified remains were buried at Potter's Field, the Jane Doe 8104 case all but vanished from everyone's desks. Within weeks, the investigation report was completed, filed among hundreds in the Sacramento County Sheriff, coroner's office's metal cabinets. In June 1981, Lieutenant Mark Jensen's final entry read, Case closed, pending future identification. The file was moved to the basement archive, where dim lights, musty paper, and metal cabinets mingled with dust. Staff there knew pending identification meant, in practice, no one will look again. By 1982, Jensen transferred to another unit. Sacramento PD's Violent Crimes Division restructured, reassigning most staff. Cold cases, especially those without identities, were deprioritized. The quarterly task allocation omitted Jane Doe 8104. Evidence the bullet, soil samples, Photos was stored in SPD's official evidence locker under an internal code, untouched thereafter. Over years, the file's label faded, its yellow cover darkened, edges stained with moisture. By the late 1980 seconds, California began modernizing criminal records. Sacramento County launched the Criminal Data Index Project, digitizing files from 1,960 to 1,985. Contracted technicians entered hundreds of documents daily into the new software. Working from tables and codes, they reached the Jane Doe files. A small error occurred. The county code, SAC 8104, was mistyped as SAN 8104, linking it to San Benito County. One letter shifted the case out of Sacramento's system. Searches by region or year returned no matches. In 1992, the automated case retrieval system replaced paper files entirely. Old cabinets were sealed, with only active major cases retained for cross-checking. Unidentified cases without leads were marked legacy files, no longer listed for active review. Jane Doe 8104 was among them. The code, already misfiled, vanished from search indexes. From 1,995 to 2,000, California's Integrated Justice Information System, IJIS, enabled data sharing across law enforcement agencies. During synchronization, miscoded files like SAN 8104 were left behind. San Benito County's servers, unaware of the error, held no corresponding file. The syncing error went unnoticed during audits, as cross-verification by victim name wasn't required. A case already buried was now erased from California's digital legal map. At the administrative level, no one noticed. The 2001 California DOJ report listed 2,467 unidentified remains in the system. That number was hundreds short of reality, as cases like Jane Doe 8104 no longer existed in the central database. Legally, she wasn't even counted as an unidentified victim, just a file with a misentered code. In the evidence locker, the bag containing the .38 caliber bullet, fabric scraps, and scene photos remained in metal box 4, B217, securely locked. During inventories, staff only checked the code, marking retained. No one opened it to inspect the contents. The black and white photo of Jane Doe's skull, faded from old film, was never revisited. When the storage room moved to the Howe Avenue storage facility in 1998, a windowless concrete warehouse, the box was transported with thousands of others, logged only as archived cases on an electronic index. Occasionally, when police trainees visited the archive to learn about evidence sealing, they saw rows of metal boxes, each a silent case. Someone would ask, "Who's Jane Doe?" The supervisor would shrug. "No one knows, from before my time." That's how Jane Doe 8104 was forgotten, not hidden deliberately, but swallowed by the very data system meant to preserve justice. By the early 2000s, when the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NamUs, launched, Sacramento County was required to update its unidentified persons list. The 2005 report stated, "Unidentified cases in County 17." But the archive held at least 18 files. Jane Doe 8104 was among them. The discrepancy went unnoticed because the SAN 8104 code flagged it as belonging to another county. While other names were uploaded to the national system, a girl shot dead by the American River remained silent, in a gap created by a faulty code. Nearly 40 years passed, with her file untouched, unopened, unmentioned. During routine evidence checks, staff merely logged Box 4, B217, intact, then marked it complete. Jane Doe 8104 had vanished from Sacramento's electronic records, not by conspiracy, but by a single mistyped character. One blink of the system erased a person's existence. In February 2024, in the Forensic Anthropology Lab at California State University, Sacramento, blue light from a monitor reflected on Emily Carter's face, a senior graduate student studying forensic investigation and criminal archive integrity. Her thesis focused on the accuracy of unidentified remains data in Sacramento County's system. A dry topic few cared about, but for Emily, it was a challenge to technology's reliability. She had temporary access to digitized Sacramento County Coroner's Office records, including thousands of Potter's Field burial files from 1,962,000. That Tuesday morning, Emily sat at her screen, using the university's retrieval software to scan data entries. She cross-referenced the county's list with NamUs, the national database for missing and unidentified persons. Her comparison scrolled through hundreds of lines. Then one entry stopped her. Row 847 was faint. White female remains. American River. 1,980. Case unresolved. No valid case number. Just a single code in the column. SAN 8104. Emily frowned. SAN was San Benito County's code, not Sacramento's. Yet the location column clearly read American River, Sacramento County. An unidentified case, misfiled by region. She cross-checked NamUs, entering keywords. 1,980. Female, Sacramento, River. The search returned nothing. By protocol, all unidentified remains post 1970 should be in NamUs. This absence meant one of two things. The file was lost, or misentered. She opened the attached file, a low-resolution PDF scan from old paper, text blurred. The faded header read, White female remains. American River, unidentified, 1,981. Below was Dr. Charles Lerner's signature, then Chief Coroner. The final note, case closed pending identification. Emily zoomed in on the red, unidentified stamp, next to a nearly illegible handwritten note, transferred to file room, April 1981. Her pulse quickened. An unidentified case, missing from national systems for over 40 years. Emily knew such errors weren't rare early in NamUs's rollout, but not from nearly half a century prior. She grabbed her notebook, jotting, Female, 1,980. American River, unidentified. That afternoon, she visited the university's main library, where public death reports were archived. In the 1981 section, she found one odd entry in Sacramento County's summary. Female, est, age, 18, gunshot wound, unidentified. No case code, no burial site. She noted it, then checked the Sacramento Bee's historical database on microfilm. A brief, the 19th of March, 1981, article read, Police discover unidentified remains by American River. No photos, no follow-ups. Emily leaned back, sensing something off. A gunshot homicide case had vanished from NamUs and current indexes. In theory, unsolved homicides were automatically synced by DOJ with updates, but a miscoded county from the original entry would filter it out. That was it. SAN 8104 was the culprit. She ran another query, all Jane Doe cases coded SAN 81 from 1,980, 1,983. The only result was a blank record, no supporting documents available. This confirmed the 1,981 unidentified girls file was misfiled to another county and lost from the data network. Emily sat back, staring at no record found on her screen, a chill running through her. She was looking at a black hole in the justice system, a victim erased not just from the world, but from the authorities' memory. The next day, Emily emailed the Sacramento County Sheriff, Coroner's Office. Subject: Data discrepancy in unidentified remains. American River 1,981. She attached the old PDF and her NamUs comparison table. 2 days passed, with no reply. She called, and the operator transferred her through 3 departments before a clerk responded. If the case isn't active, we can't access originals. You can file a public records request. The answer was robotic, like an automated system. Undeterred, Emily submitted a California Public Records Act request. A week later, the response came, "No records match your request. No Jane Doe, 1980, One American River case, in county data." She reread it 3 times. They claimed the case never existed. Yet she held a 1981 PDF with a real coroner's signature and seal. That evening, Emily reopened the blurry file, zooming in on American River, until the pixels broke apart. She spotted a faint ink mark in the corner, number 8104. She re-entered it into the university system, swapping SAN for SAC. The result: record not found, but matching format exists. The system recognized Sacramento's correct format, but the original data was gone. The format match proved the file once belonged to Sacramento, then was misassigned. Emily printed the PDF, marking blurred sections in red, and clipped it to her notebook. Her final research entry that day: unidentified female, American River 1981. Possible database error. Must verify with county archives. She didn't know this simple note would restart a case buried for 43 years, and Jane Doe 8104 was about to emerge from the shadows of forgotten data. On the 4th of March 2024, after nearly 2 weeks of cross-checking and gathering data evidence, Emily Carter escalated her findings. She prepared a concise report with the old PDF printouts, case code comparison table, and detailed notes on discovering the SAN 8104 error. At the top, she typed, "Request for case verification, potential lost homicide record, Sacramento County, 1981. Recipient, California Department of Justice, Forensic Services Division." In the letter, Emily explained that the 1981 unidentified case appeared to have a miscoded county, rendering it untraceable in NamUs, and requested state forensics verify if Jane Doe 8104 existed in Sacramento's original records. She sent copies via email and certified mail. 4 days later, while at the library, her phone buzzed. A calm, professional female voice. "This is Jennifer Hollis, DOJ Forensics. We received your submission. It looks like you've uncovered a genuinely lost case." Emily held her breath. Hollis continued, "In our microfilm archive, there's a faint 1981 record, signed by Dr. Charles Lerner, matching white female remains, American River, but it's filed under an empty San Benito County folder. This confirms your suspicion." Emily thanked her and asked, "Can I access the original, or have it transferred back to Sacramento?" Hollis replied, "Per protocol, we'll notify Sacramento County's Cold Case Unit, who have authority over unidentified cases. They'll decide whether to reopen." The next day, an email from DOJ arrived. "Case 8104 verified, forwarded to Sacramento County Sheriff's Office for review." The brief line left Emily stunned. 43 years later, a case thought non-existent was returned to its rightful place. 3 days later, Detective Aria Mendoza, Sacramento County's Cold Case Unit lead, called. Her voice was steady, clear. "Miss Carter, I'm assigned to the case you found. I've read your report. On behalf of the Sheriff's Office, thank you for bringing this file back to our attention. You may have revived a case forgotten for over 4 decades." Their first meeting was set at the Cold Case Unit headquarters on Bradshaw Road. Emily brought her printouts, scans, and comparison notes. Mendoza, a woman in her 40s, short hair, sharp gaze flipped through each page. On the table, she spread the 1981 coroner's file copy and DOJ's verification letter. "I've contacted the old evidence archive," Mendoza said. "If this case exists, the evidence might still be at Howe Avenue. They keep all non-destroyed items from the 70 seconds to 90 seconds. That afternoon, they visited the archive. Security scanned cards through 2 metal doors. Rows of steel shelves stretched out, each holding numbered metal boxes. The archive manager, Dale Perkins, a 20-year veteran, checked the index. "We have a box coded 4B 217. labeled Unidentified Female, 1981, American River, untouched since 1998. He gloved up and unlocked it. Inside were 3 old evidence bags, one sealed with the .38 bullet, one with soil and fabric scraps, and a manila envelope with 4 black and white scene photos. The envelope bore a red stamp, Evidence, Do Not Destroy. Emily froze at the first photo. A muddy riverbank, roots and sludge, with a discolored skull beside a scale ruler. Faint handwritten text read, JD 80 104 divided by Wadav East Bank. She took a deep breath, the PDF's contents suddenly real. Mendoza checked the seals, signed the box opening log, and called forensics, prepped for DNA transfer to UC Davis. On the drive back, Mendoza told Emily, I've seen many old cases, but rarely one completely erased from the system like this. We'll reopen this under the correct Sacramento code, SAC 8104. You might want to note in your research that this is a textbook lost file recovery case. In that day's internal report, Mendoza wrote, Date reopened, the 8th of March 2024. Reported by Emily Carter, SAC State. DOJ verification. Confirmed. Case status. Reopened. Pending forensic reevaluation. Next steps. DNA testing, identity verification, cross-check with nameless and 1,979, 1,980, 3 missing persons files. Back at the university lab, Emily received a copied DOJ email to the sheriff's office. Case SAC 8104. Officially reinstated under Sacramento jurisdiction. Below was Detective Aria Mendoza's name, noted as primary investigator. That night, in her notebook, Emily wrote, the 8th of March, 2024, Jane Doe 80, 104 confirmed real. Case officially reopened after 43 years. Evidence intact, awaiting analysis. A forgotten case may soon speak again through science. Outside, Sacramento hummed under light rain. Emily shut off the lab light, her laptop still open, displaying SAC 8104 status. Reopened. Below was a small system note. Case origin previously unknown restored from legacy data. To Emily, it wasn't just a restored code. It was proof that justice sometimes needs only one person patient enough to look where others passed by. On the 11th of March 2024, the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit buzzed with the hum of a photocopier and the scent of old paper. Detective Aria Mendoza sat at a desk covered in yellowed files, each stamped, Evidence, Do Not Remove. In her hands was the restored 1,980, one original file, bearing Lieutenant Mark Jensen and Dr. Charles Lerner's signature. Each page was a slice of the past. Watt Avenue scene reports, mud and skull descriptions, bullet trajectory, rotted fabric, and a photo of the .38 caliber bullet tangled in roots. Mendoza read carefully, typing notes. No personal effects recovered. Probable homicide. Female victim, age 16-20, shot at close range. Case never identified. She paused at the report's final handwritten line. Remains interred, Pottersfield, Sacramento County, the 2nd of April 1981. This was the key lead. The remains had never been exhumed or DNA tested, as genetic analysis didn't exist in 1981 investigations. Mendoza knew if bone samples remained, they could reveal Jane Doe 8104's true identity. That noon, she convened a small meeting with 3 people, Dr. Jennifer Hollis, DOJ Forensic Services, Captain Neil Bowers, Cold Case Unit Supervisor, and Emily Carter, who uncovered the case. Mendoza presented briefly, spreading a Watt Avenue map and the 1,981 coroner's file copy on the table. All evidence, bullet, fabric, scene photos, has been verified. To proceed, we need a court order to exhume the remains at Potter's Field for DNA sampling, she said. Bowers nodded, opening his laptop. I'll have the DA's office draft the petition. But this is complex, Aria. Potter's Field is a mass cemetery. We need to prove legal necessity. We can't exhume arbitrarily. Mendoza understood. California law required any exhumation, even for scientific testing, to have a superior court order and public health office approval. She began drafting the petition. The opening read, Asterisk. Exhumation request. Case Sac. 8104. Jane Doe. American River. 1981. Asterisk. Asterisk. Reason. To identify the victim of an unsolved homicide, per California Health and Safety Code, Section 27491.45. Asterisk. Attached were the 1981 Forensic Report, 2024 Data Recovery Memo, DOJ confirmation, and evidence verification from the archive. On March 14, the file was submitted to Sacramento County Superior Court. Judge Eleanor McKinney reviewed it, requesting additional proof linking the evidence to the case. Mendoza sent DOJ's letter, Evidence Box 4B, 217 containing items recovered from unidentified homicide victim, 1981, verified as belonging to Sacramento County jurisdiction. This satisfied the court. A week later, the exhumation order was approved, signed, and red-stamped. On the morning of March 21, Mendoza held the order, feeling like she gripped a key to a door locked for 43 years. She called Dr. Hollis. We're cleared to exhume, prepped the forensic team. Dodd partnered with UC Davis Forensic DNA Lab, equipped for processing ancient bone samples. Before starting, Mendoza had SPD's technical team verify the chain of custody critical for DNA evidence to hold up in court. In the archive, staff detailed every evidence movement since 1981. Received by Coroner's Office, the 2nd of April 2081. Transferred to SPD Evidence Room, 6/81. Moved to Archive Storage, 9/98. Verified intact, 2/24. All signatures were valid, seals intact. The evidence retained full legal integrity. A brief, closed press conference was held at police headquarters. Mendoza answered a local reporter. This isn't a new case. It's an old one the system forgot. We're restoring it to its rightful place in Sacramento's justice records. The press noted it, but few paid attention, assuming it was a routine technical exhumation. On March 26, Sacramento's sky was overcast, fog blanketing Potter's Field Cemetery on the city's southern edge, where thousands of unmarked graves lay. The forensic team set up a white tent, deploying ground-penetrating radar to locate the burial. Per 1981 records, Jane Doe 8104's remains were in row 3, plot 27, but the hand-drawn cemetery map was off by meters. Radar revealed a slightly sunken area, suggesting prior digging. After 2 hours, digging over a meter deep, they hit an old nylon-wrapped wooden box. Mendoza stood steps away, watching technicians lift it. The lid bore faded black marker. Unidentified female, 1981. Inside, bones were wrapped in muslin and double-sealed nylon. For the first time in over 40 years, light touched the remains of the nameless woman. Per protocol, all actions were videotaped and logged. Exhumation time, witnesses, environmental conditions, sample transfers. The remains were placed in a sterile metal box and transported to UC Davis Forensic DNA Lab under escort by 2 officers and a DOJ staffer. Back at the office, Mendoza filed a report. The 26th of March 2024, remains recovered from Potter's Field under court order. Evidence integrity maintained. Samples scheduled for DNA extraction and sequencing. She printed a copy for Emily Carter, who was tracking the process for her thesis. Emily read slowly, then said quietly, "After all these years, someone's finally looking at her again." Mendoza replied, her gaze steady and resolute. "No, Emily, we're not just looking. We're giving her a name." Outside, dusk fell over the city. Distant sirens mixed with the soft hum of the office air conditioner. On Mendoza's desk, the SAC 8104 file was marked in red, reopened, active investigation. After 43 years, Jane Doe's buried case was officially alive again in Sacramento's justice system. On the morning of the 27th of March 2024, thick fog cloaked the ground at Sacramento's southern edge. Potter's Field Cemetery, for the nameless, sat silent amid old oak trees. A narrow dirt path, flanked by knee-high grass, led in. The forensic team from Sacramento County Coroner's Office, joined by UC Davis forensic archaeologists, arrived at 6 a.m. to begin exhumation. Leading was Detective Aria Mendoza, who secured the court order. With her were Dr. Jennifer Hollis from DOJ and Dr. Karen Joe, a forensic anthropologist. On the ground, ground-penetrating radar, GPR, scanned microwaves into the earth, displaying feedback on a laptop under a white tent. The 1981 archive map marked Jane Doe 81-04's grave in row 3, plot 27, but hand-drawn errors allowed a few meters discrepancy. Technicians moved the GPR along the area, gray bands appearing on the screen. After 3 passes, a rectangular 1.6-meter long, 90-centimeter deep anomaly showed clear reflective edges, a wooden box. "We've got it," Dr. Joe said softly. Mendoza noted the time, 7:42 a.m. The team dug manually, removing soil layers with trowels and small rakes to avoid damage. After nearly an hour, a shovel hit something solid. Clearing the dirt revealed a dark, weathered wooden box. A worker read the faded handwritten label aloud. WF, SAC 80, 104, short for white female, Sacramento, 1980, 1, case, 04. Silence fell for a moment. Mendoza signaled the camera to start recording. Everything followed protocol, continuous video, verbal logging of time, witnesses, and conditions. The lid opened, revealing muslin-wrapped, nylon-sealed remains. The red seal remained intact, stamped with an old rubber, Coroner's Office, Sacramento County. Dr. Joe cut the outer nylon, unfolding the cloth. Ivory-colored human bones, neatly arranged. The skull was mostly intact, the occipital bone viable for mitochondrial DNA, mADNA, extraction. "We'll sample the right occipital bone, its thickest and densest," Dr. Hollis said. She used a specialized tool to cut a fingertip-sized piece, placing it in a sterile steel box labeled Specimen 80-104, divided by occipital bone sample. Mendoza signed the log, noting the time, 09:15 a.m. A small arm bone fragment was also taken as a backup. All were sealed in nitrogen-preserved bags, placed in a temperature-controlled container. The samples were driven 45 minutes to UC Davis Forensic DNA Laboratory, escorted by 2 officers to maintain the chain of custody. At the lab, Dr. Lindsay Huang, head of ancient DNA analysis, received and signed for them. The unsealing, logging, and storage were recorded from 3 camera angles. Huang explained they'd use mitochondrial DNA extraction maternally inherited, ideal for degraded ancient samples. Emily Carter, who uncovered the case, observed from behind glass. She stood beside Mendoza, watching technicians in sterile white coats grind the bone sample into fine powder in an isolation chamber, then process it in enzyme solution for DNA extraction. The process took hours. One DNA portion was amplified via PCR, the rest cross-checked with CODIS, Combined DNA Index System, and NamUs mitochondrial database, holding DNA from thousands of families of missing persons from the 1,970 seconds, 90 seconds. 2 weeks later, on the night of the 9th of April 2024, Mendoza's phone rang at 10:37 p.m. Dr. Huang's voice. "Aria, you should come to the lab tomorrow morning. We have results." The next morning, Mendoza and Emily arrived at UC Davis. In a small meeting room, a gene chart glowed on the screen. Huang pointed to the sequence. "We extracted a complete MACDNA profile, 99.998% reliable. Matched against NAMUs, it aligns with a 2015 submission family of Maria Elena Cruz, missing from Sacramento in 1980. The room fell silent. Emily gripped her hands, her heart pounding. Huang opened a file, continuing. The reference sample came from Rosa Cruz, Maria's mother, submitted in 2015 when Sacramento PD joined the National Missing Persons DNA Project. Their mtDNA matches perfectly across 16 control regions, no mistake. Mendoza stared at the screen. Match confirmed. SAC 80104 equals missing person Maria E. Cruz. Case 1980, 471. She took a deep breath. So we've found her, she said softly. 44 years after Maria vanished, Jane Doe's identity was restored. UC Davis's official report to DOJ and Sacramento PD concluded. Bone sample from Potter's Field, code WF, SAC 8104, fully matches mtDNA reference from Rosa Cruz. Victim identified as Maria Elena Cruz, born 1963, missing September 1980. This is a long-term missing person identification via mitochondrial DNA analysis, 99.998% reliability. That afternoon, Mendoza brought the results to the cold case unit. She opened the old file, where Jane Doe 8104 had lain silent for 4 decades, and wrote in red on the cover, identified, Maria Elena Cruz. She said nothing, just looked at the 1981 black and white scene photo, the skull in river mud, and nodded slightly. Emily sat nearby, eyes fixed on the confirmation report. What began with a blurry data error had returned a person to her true name. One mistyped character hid her for 44 years. Emily said quietly. Mendoza replied. And one persistent person brought her back. On the 10th of April 2024, the results were sent to Sacramento County District Attorney's Office and California DOJ. SPD's internal memo stated, cold case number, SAC 8104, officially identified as Maria Elena Cruz. Investigation upgraded to active homicide inquiry. As Mendoza shut her computer, afternoon light streamed through the window, illuminating the newly renamed file. After 44 years, the nameless victim by the American River had her identity back, and the investigation into Maria Elena Cruz's death began anew. On the morning of the 11th of April 2024, just one day after Jane Doe 8104 was confirmed as Maria Elena Cruz, Sacramento County's cold case unit entered a new phase. Reconstructing the timeline of the night, she vanished the 13th of September 1980. Detective Aria Mendoza stood before a large whiteboard, covered in dozens of sticky notes connected by red string, mapping the hours from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. She wanted to know where Maria went, who she met, and why her life ended by the American River, hours after leaving school. First data point, 9:10 p.m. Maria left Hiram Johnson High School's auditorium after the student dance. 3 classmates confirmed. She wore a light green dress, white sneakers, and said she'd walk by the river to cool off before heading home. Second data point, 9:25 p.m. A Harris Market receipt, recovered from 1,980 evidence, showed her buying a soda and mints. The store was 0.8 miles from school. The cashier from that night, Daniel Reed, now retired, was re-interviewed by phone. He vaguely recalled a young, brown-haired girl, alone, very polite, and not seeming worried. Mendoza wrote on the board, 9:10. Left school. 9:25. At Harris Market. 9:40. Watt Avenue area. 10. No sightings. The 20-minute gap between 9:40 and 10 was the blind spot when everything likely happened. She decided to revisit Hiram Johnson, now a modernized campus. The principal's office helped contact surviving 1980 staff. In the employee list, one name stood out, Paul Whitaker, music teacher and choir director. Mendoza underlined it in red. Reason: Maria's diary, recovered by forensics, had a final entry noting, choir practice, Mr. W. 2 days later, she met Lisa Boyd, Maria's best friend at the time, now living in Carmichael. Lisa recalled that night. Before leaving, Maria said, I have to stop by the music room. Mr. Whitaker asked me to drop off some sheet music. This detail was never in the 1980 file. Lisa confirmed Maria left the auditorium alone, holding sheet music, heading toward the music building behind the football field near the parking lot. Mendoza felt a major piece of the puzzle emerge. She retrieved the 1980 school layout map. The music room was on the east side of the main campus, with a rear exit leading directly to the parking lot where Maria was last seen. The old police report had checked the lot but never mentioned the music room. Mendoza held the map, saying quietly, "We've been looking in the wrong direction for 40 years. On April 14, she accessed Paul Whitaker's personnel file. Records showed he left Hiram Johnson in November 1980, just 2 months after Maria's disappearance. He then taught at a small private school in Carmichael, retiring in 1995. No disciplinary issues were noted. However, Mendoza spotted something. The 1980 Jane Doe file placed the body's discovery on the east bank of the American River, less than 3 miles from Whitaker's current home. She began building an expanded timeline with 2 columns, Maria's movements and Whitaker's locations. Data showed that on the evening of September 13, Whitaker managed sound for the dance, leaving the auditorium around 9:15 p.m. exactly when Maria said she'd head to the music room to meet him. No one saw them leave together. Mendoza called the Department of Education archives for Whitaker's 1980 teacher record and address. The file returned. Paul R. Whitaker, age 35, 1980 address. 4200 Watt Avenue. That address was right at the head of Watt Avenue Bridge, a straight path to where Maria's body was found. Mendoza knew this was no coincidence. To bolster the evidence, she met Officer Linda Shaw, a rookie in Jensen's 1980 team. Now in her 60s, Shaw recalled, "We suspected someone at the school, but there was no evidence. Someone mentioned the music teacher, but the higher-ups said there was no basis, as we found no trace of Maria in the music room." Mendoza asked, "Was it thoroughly searched?" Shaw gave a wry smile. Thorough for 1980 meant looking through the window, seeing nothing odd, and calling it done. Mendoza wrote on the board. 9:15. Whitaker leaves auditorium. 9:20. Maria at Harris Market. 9:35. Possible music room meeting. 10. No sightings. She circled 9:30-10. 0 inches read the perfect window for contact or conflict. Meanwhile, Emily Carter helped search old Sacramento Bee archives. A rare 1980 opening ceremony photo surfaced. Students on the choir stage, Maria in the center holding a small guitar, and behind her a dark-haired man with glasses, forced smile Paul Whitaker. Mendoza enlarged the photo, placing it beside the area map. Whitaker was central to every point: the school, parking lot, Watt Avenue Bridge, and his 1980 home. Everything converged. On April 15, she presented a preliminary report to Captain Bowers. "The victim likely met Whitaker after the dance," she said. "He's the last known person directly linked to Maria. We need to check his movements that night." Bowers nodded, approving a full query, cross-checking license plates, addresses, and 1980 police reports. That evening, Mendoza sat alone in her office. She replayed Lisa Boyd's recorded statement. Maria said she'd rehearse with Mr. Whitaker, just for a few minutes. The words echoed in the quiet, like a tape rewinding time. She looked at the wall map, red ink, tracing from the school, past Harris Market, around Watt Avenue, ending where the body was found. Nearby, Whitaker's 1980 newspaper photo sat with Maria's 2 figures, 44 years apart, now on the same investigation board. Mendoza closed her notebook, writing the final line in her report. Timeline of the 13th of September 1980, completed. Last known contact with victim, Paul R. Whitaker, music teacher. Need to verify movements and vehicle between 9:30-10 p.m. She turned off the light. In the dim hallway glow, the whiteboard stood out. Last seen, Hiram Johnson High School, music room. A name once a footnote in history, was now the focus of a new investigation. Paul Whitaker, the last man known to have spoken to Maria Elena Cruz on that fateful 1980 night. On the 17th of April 2024, Detective Aria Mendoza was at Evidence Storage Room 4B Howe Avenue facility, where Sacramento's forgotten files sat for over 3 decades. The steel door opened, releasing a mix of metal and old paper in the air-conditioned chill. Inside, hundreds of metal boxes lined up, each a silent gravestone of numbers. Mendoza was joined by Dr. Jennifer Hollis and 2 DOJ Forensic Services technicians. They were there to do what 1981 couldn't extract evidence with modern genetic standards. Archive manager Dale Perkins placed box 4B217 on a steel table. It held all evidence from the Watt Avenue scene: a .38 caliber bullet, wet fabric scraps, a soil bag, and a single hair sealed separately. The red evidence seal was intact, the faded SPD evidence still legible. Perkins checked the chain of custody: no openings since 1980, one except a 1998 technical inventory. Everything's pristine, he said, signing the transfer log. Mendoza gloved up, carefully opening each evidence bag. First, the fabric worn and rotted, pale gray, possibly from clothing or car upholstery. Under UV light, no blood or skin fibers showed. The .38 bullet retained clear rifling marks, labeled E14. Hollis said it would go to DOJ ballistics for national database comparison, though matches were unlikely for such an old case. The critical item was in the third small bag, a 4.3 centimeters brown hair, labeled "Recovered near remains, right bank, the 17th of March 2081. Hollis placed the hair in a sterile tray, examining it under a magnifying glass. No root, but there's enough shaft material for nuclear DNA analysis. With 2024 tech, it's feasible. Mendoza signed the transfer log, and the group left, taking the evidence to DOJ's lab. 2 days later, analysis began. In a clean room, technician Sarah Kim used an enzyme solution to break down protein from the hair shaft. Nuclear DNA was amplified via massively parallel sequencing, MPS, reading full genetic sequences from tiny samples. 3 days later, preliminary results appeared. Female profile, not matching Maria Elena Cruz's DNA. Mendoza frowned. If the hair wasn't Maria's, it belonged to someone else at the scene, Hollis explained. The DNA is clear, female, no maternal relation to the victim. Notably, the genome carries haplogroup H501, relatively rare in California, but present in some Scottish-Irish families. Mendoza noted this, requesting the data be sent to the Genetic Genealogy Network for kinship matches in open databases like GED Match and Family Tree DNA. A week later, the forensic genealogy team's report stunned the group. GED Match traced 3 individuals with 0.8% to 1.2% DNA matches, indicating third or fourth-degree relatives. All bore the surname Whitaker. 2 lived in Oregon, 1 in Texas, all reporting ancestry from a Whitaker family settled in Sacramento since the 1930s. Mendoza read the list, her gaze hardening. Paul R. Whitaker, she said slowly. We're back to that name. To confirm, DOJ conducted extended analysis, combining nuclear and mitochondrial DNA from the hair. The final report, issued April 29, stated, hair specimen from case SAC 8104 is genetically consistent with individuals bearing surname Whitaker. Probability of random match, 1 in 74 million. That probability was strong enough for criminal forensic standards. Mendoza immediately pulled Whitaker's personal records. She contacted the Bureau of Vital Records and Department of Motor Vehicles for verification. No criminal DNA existed for him, but his 2023 driver's license showed he still lived in Carmichael, 3 miles from Watt Avenue, where Maria's body was found. To avoid errors, Mendoza had DOJ's genealogy team validate the kinship. They built a family tree from matching DNA, using public civil records. The result, the hair was linked to a second-degree paternal relative of Paul Whitaker's line, specifically a fourth-generation cousin through his great-grandfather's brother. In other words, Hollis said, this DNA almost certainly comes from a direct descendant of Paul Whitaker's bloodline. Not a coincidence. Mendoza sat silent. The numbers, data, and names formed an undeniable logic. She thought of the timeline she'd built. 9:30 p.m., Maria left the auditorium, saying she'd meet Whitaker at the music room. 44 years later, a hair found beside her body carried his family's genetic marker. No longer speculation, but a DNA thread tying victim to the last person she saw. That afternoon, Mendoza drafted a preliminary report for Captain Bowers and the district attorney's office. Title: Forensic Link Between Victim and Subject, Genetic Correlation to Whitaker Lineage. It stated, 1,981 evidence remains intact. Chain of custody preserved. Hair from the scene does not belong to the victim. Modern DNA analysis confirms distant kinship to Paul R. Whitaker. Next step: request warrant for direct DNA sample from suspect for comparison. Bowers read it, looking up at Mendoza. Are you sure? 40-plus years, one misstep could collapse the case. Mendoza replied firmly, no mistakes. Technology doesn't lie, only people overlooked it. That evening, she stood alone in her office, gazing through the window's streetlight reflection. On her desk, Maria's old photo sat beside a 1,980 newspaper clipping of Whitaker with the choir. Two worlds, once separate, now linked by a hair thinner than thread, stronger than time. Mendoza wrote the final line in her investigation log. Evidence number E32, single hair sample. Genetic match to Whitaker lineage confirmed. For 44 years, this strand of hair waited in silence. Now it speaks. On the 2nd of May, 2024, Detective Aria Mendoza submitted a nearly 50-page report to her superiors, compiling all new evidence. The hair's DNA matching the Whitaker lineage, Lisa Boyd's testimony, and the detailed the 13th of September 1980 timeline. In the cold case unit's small meeting room, Captain Neil Bowers read each page, then said curtly, you can start tracking the target. Keep it quiet. No contact yet. Mendoza nodded. The Maria Elena Cruz case officially entered active investigation. Their suspect, Paul Raymond Whitaker, 76, was a music teacher at Hiram Johnson High from 1,973 to 1,980. After resigning, he became a choir director at St. Andrew Lutheran Church in Carmichael. Records showed he lived alone, had no criminal history, and resided at the same address for over 30 years. A single-story red-roofed house, 3 miles from Watt Avenue Bridge, where Maria's body was found in 1981. Mendoza assigned Detective Carl Nguyen, a surveillance specialist, to lead a tracking team. They used vehicle-mounted cameras and civilian drones, monitoring Whitaker for 2 weeks. Reports described him as reclusive, with a routine: 7 a.m. gardening, 9 a.m. church visits, afternoons reading or playing piano. But Mendoza noted a small shed behind the church where he went almost daily. Once part of the church's old music storage, it was now abandoned. She obtained a covert surveillance warrant, allowing non-invasive video recording. From May 9 to 12, the team captured footage of Whitaker cleaning the shed, repeatedly handling old wooden boxes. One afternoon, a camera caught him opening a violin case, revealing something wrapped in cloth. Though blurry, Mendoza noted his cautious demeanor and wary glance. He's keeping something, she said. Meanwhile, she dug into his past. Mendoza traced Whitaker's California Department of Education records. His November 1,980 resignation letter cited personal stress, relocation. No evidence showed him teaching anywhere for 2 years until he surfaced at St. Andrew in 1982. Oddly, this coincided with Maria's case being marked closed, pending identification. Mendoza searched Sacramento's police archives for 1,980 seconds reports involving Whitaker. She found a 1,983 traffic stop. Whitaker was pulled over for running a red light near Watt Avenue, his car showing a small dent on the right door. Nothing major, but the report noted, Driver appeared nervous when questioned. No one cared then, but to Mendoza, every detail mattered. To strengthen the case, she recontacted DOJ's genealogy unit. Experts built an extended family tree, tracing Whitaker's California lineage, confirming the scene's hair matched a direct descendant of Thomas Whitaker, Paul's great-grandfather, at 99.997% probability. This ruled out a random distant relative. In other words, the DNA likely came directly from Paul or his immediate offspring. He had no children. On May 13, Mendoza made indirect contact. Posing as a freelance reporter, she called Street Andrews, claiming to interview longtime community choir directors. The church secretary confirmed Whitaker still led Sunday choir, describing him as calm, kind, lives alone, no social media. Mendoza thanked her and hung up. The less public presence, the harder to approach, but a familiar trait of those with secrets. That day, DOJ's ballistics division reported the 1,981 .38 bullet had 5R rifling, common in Smith & Wesson Model 36 handguns, popular among police and civilians in the late 1970s. Mendoza checked Sacramento's 1,980 gun registry and, within minutes, found a hit. Paul R. Whitaker. Permit for a Model 36. Serial 3D2745. Registered in 1978. The gun was never reported lost. She printed the registry, placing it beside the bullet's photo. The right-leaning rifling matched the evidence sample. Mendoza sat still for a moment, then told Carl, "If we find that gun, the case is over." On May 15, covert surveillance continued. That evening, Whitaker left the church at 8:40, carrying a cloth bag. The team followed him home, watching him turn off the shed's light without locking it. Carl used an infrared camera to capture images through a door gap, old instruments inside, with a wooden box about 50 centimeters long on a shelf sized for a clarinet case or a wrapped handgun. The surveillance report was submitted the next morning. Mendoza compiled the full case file for the district attorney's office, requesting a search and DNA collection warrant. She listed the evidence. DNA link. Scene hair matches Paul R. Whitaker's direct lineage. Residence proximity. Less than 3 miles from the crime scene. Weapon history. Smith & Wesson Model 36. .38 caliber. Matching the murder bullet. Connection to victim. Direct teacher. Last known to meet Maria. Suspicious behavior. Secretly cleaning shed. Preserving old items. On the afternoon of May 16, she signed the request for Sacramento Superior Court. Judge Eleanor McKinney, who approved the exhumation, reviewed it quickly and said, "You have probable cause. I'll issue the warrant, effective 72 hours. Her pen signed, the red stamp pressed. Approved, search and DNA warrant. As Mendoza left the courthouse, Sacramento's sky turned deep orange at dusk. She held the warrant, knowing the game had reached its decisive act. 44 years after a girl vanished by the river, the mild-mannered music teacher was now the prime suspect in Sacramento's oldest reopened murder case. Early on the 17th of May 2024, the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office task force gathered outside St. Andrew Lutheran Church in Carmichael. Fog lingered, early light filtering through stained glass windows, casting faint red and blue streaks on stone walls. Detective Aria Mendoza stepped from a black SUV, holding the search and DNA warrant signed by Judge McKinney. It listed 2 locations, Paul R. Whitaker's home, and the church's music shed where surveillance caught his frequent visits. "We follow protocol," Mendoza told the technicians. "No noise, he's 76, likely inside." 4 officers, in bulletproof vests, body cams active, surrounded the small house. At 6:35, Mendoza knocked firmly. "Sacramento County Sheriff, we have a search warrant." No response. 30 seconds later, the door cracked open. Whitaker appeared in a bathrobe, silver hair, eyes hidden behind thick glasses. He glanced at the warrant, face expressionless. "Do what the law allows," he said softly, stepping back. The house was small, tidy, but dated. The living room held old choir performance photos, music teaching certificates, and tuned instruments. Mendoza had technicians photograph every corner. On a desk, she spotted an envelope with a yellowed receipt. Music Depot, strings purchase, September 1980. Signed, P. Whitaker. The date matched the week Maria vanished. She sealed it, labeled E81, W1. In the study, an old wooden cabinet held music books and instrument cases. A technician opened the bottom drawer, revealing a dark brown guitar case, frayed, with faint, brownish stains near the zipper. Under UV light, the stains glowed faint purple, typical of aged blood. Mendoza signaled a halt, photographing close-up. "Seal this sample. No further touching," she called. The evidence bag was labeled. Instrument bag, possible blood trace, location, main residence closet. As forensics swabbed, Whitaker sat in an armchair, staring out a window, silent. Mendoza read his Miranda rights, then took a buccal swab for DNA comparison. He didn't resist, only murmuring, "You're chasing something long dead." Mendoza replied curtly, "No, we're finding answers for someone who hasn't rested." After 2 hours, the team moved to Street Andrew Lutheran Church, less than a mile away. Reverend Olson, pre-notified, cooperated. The church was quiet, smelling of pine and sandalwood from pews. Behind the main hall was the music storage shed, where surveillance spotted Whitaker. The plywood door's lock was loose, fresh dust disturbed. Inside, flashlights lit dusty benches and stacked violin, clarinet, and guitar cases. A technician called out, "There's a rag here." Mendoza approached, seeing a white cloth, half-stained dark brown, rolled in an instrument bin. Nearby was a bottle of instrument cleaning solution with hydrogen peroxide, often used to clean blood. Everything was filmed and sealed on site. She ordered a full shed floor scan. Infrared detected organic residue under dust near a wall. Clearing debris revealed a small gray fabric scrap, frayed, matching the 1981 scene fabric. Mendoza examined it, saying, "Log it, take a DNA sample. If it matches, we have a complete evidence chain." By noon, forensics collected 8 items: the blood-stained guitar case, rag, cleaning solution bottle, fabric scrap, 1,980 strings receipt, and 4 microscopic samples from the floor and music cabinet. All were sealed separately, transported under Mendoza's direct supervision. The chain of custody was fully documented: time, location, recipient, sealer. While technicians worked, Carl Nguyen, monitoring outside, reported a key detail from a neighbor. Mildred Han, living across from Whitaker since the 1982nd, recalled, "The night that girl went missing, I heard a car start loudly from his house, around 10 p.m., a dark green sedan. I didn't think much of it until I saw him washing it for a long time the next morning." This wasn't in the old file, as police hadn't canvassed the area. Mendoza noted, "Additional witness. Confirms vehicle movement matching victim's disappearance." As the team loaded evidence into the van, Mendoza glanced back at the shed. Sunlight slanted through the wooden door, illuminating floating dust. On a high shelf, she noticed a small, dusty frame. She reached up, blew off the dust, a black and white photo of Hiram Johnson's choir, girls in the front row, Whitaker behind Maria, 40 years younger. She handed it to a technician, voice low. "Keep this. Log it as supplemental evidence." That afternoon, the initial report went to headquarters. DOJ's lab began DNA testing. Both the guitar case and rag tested positive for old hemoglobin traces. The extracted genetic profiles were complete, ready for comparison with Maria's DNA and Whitaker's swab. Mendoza reviewed the preliminary results, feeling history rewrite itself. Evidence dormant for 44 years, fabric threads, dried blood, yellowed ink on a receipt, now told the story Maria Elena Cruz never could. Before leaving, Mendoza looked back at the church, where Sunday hymns once rang. Now, it was sealed with yellow tape, silent. She closed her notebook, writing the day's final line. Search complete. Multiple potential biological evidences recovered. All items sealed and submitted for DNA sequencing. Awaiting confirmation. As the van left Carmichael, the red sunset blanketed the sky. In the trunk, the past's evidence rattled softly with each turn, as if stirring awake, ready to speak. On the 22nd of May 2024, the California Department of Justice's Forensic Biology Division lab in Sacramento stayed lit all night. Inside the analysis chamber, technicians in sterile suits handled evidence from case SAC 8104 Maria Elena Cruz's case. On a stainless steel tray, 4 key samples were aligned: fabric scrap, rag, guitar case, and instrument cleaner bottle. All tested positive for old blood under UV light. Identifying these blood traces' origins would shape the investigation. Dr. Jennifer Hollis stood by a screen displaying molecular graphs. The STR test short tandem repeat DNA profiling ran, comparing 21 genetic loci between the samples and Maria Elena Cruz's reference DNA from the exhumed occipital bone. Outside the glass chamber, Detective Aria Mendoza watched, notebook in hand, heart racing but face calm. After 44 years, the dried blood on that fabric could be Maria's only testimony. The first graph appeared the fabric scrap. 18 of 21 loci matched Maria's DNA perfectly. Hollis glanced at a colleague. This match is near certain. The rag, the second sample, showed identical results. All loci matched the victim, but the third sample blood traces inside the guitar case stunned them. The electropherogram showed 2 DNA profiles, one matching Maria, another differing at 7 loci. Hollis frowned. We have a mixed sample victim and someone else. She ordered a YSTR test, targeting male Y chromosome markers. 4 hours later, the result came. The male DNA on the guitar case was clear, 15 loci intact, no noise. Compared to Paul R. Whitaker's buccal swab from the search, the system showed a perfect 15 over 15 loci match. Hollis exhaled, turning to Mendoza. Aria, it's him. No mistake. The odds of error are 1 in 700 billion. The room fell silent, save for the hum of fans and keyboard taps. Mendoza gripped her notebook, the words, Maria Elena Cruz, 1980, trembling with her breaths. She asked softly, Can we confirm the time origin? This is old blood from the 80 seconds, right? Hollis nodded. We checked hemoglobin oxidation and DNA degradation. The sample's age fits around 40 years. It's not recent. The detailed results were printed that afternoon. The 32-page report concluded. DNA extracted from biological material recovered on instrument case matches mitochondrial and STR profile of victim Maria Elena Cruz. Secondary male DNA profile recovered matches directly to buccal swab from subject Paul R. Whitaker. Probability of coincidental match, 1 in 7.1 times 10 to the power of 11. Hollis signed, stamped the DOJ seal, and placed the original in a sealed red envelope for the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office. A copy went to Mendoza. Back at the cold case unit that afternoon, Mendoza opened the report on her desk. Late sunlight slanted through the window, illuminating the fateful numbers, 1 over 700, 0, a probability smaller than winning the national lottery twice. In investigations, that number meant one thing: certainty. She called an urgent meeting with Captain Bowers and Prosecutor Elaine Marsh. Mendoza presented each point. Sealed 1,981 evidence, chain of custody verified. STR and YSTR confirm male DNA belongs to Paul Whitaker. Victim's blood on the same evidence, proof of direct contact. Witness statements and 38 weapon ownership solidify the chain. Marsh skimmed the pages, then said, This is enough for a murder charge. We have physical evidence, direct DNA, motive, and opportunity. I'll sign the preliminary charging document tomorrow morning. That night, alone after others left, Mendoza sat with her worn notebook, flipping to the first line from 3 months ago. White female remains. American River, 1,981. Then, it was just a nameless data point. Now, every detail, hair, blood, receipt, ink, wove a complete story of a 17-year-old girl, killed, and forgotten, and the man who silenced her for 4 decades. On May 23, the case referral for prosecution was formally sent from Sacramento PD to the district attorney's office. The bolded title, Subject, Paul Raymond Whitaker, Homicide of Maria Elena Cruz, 1980. Recommendation. File criminal charges, murder, second degree, Penal Code Plus 100 Below Mendoza's signature, she added a small, non-required handwritten note. Victim identified after 44 years. Justice delayed but not denied. That day, California DOJ's internal report noted the case as one of Sacramento's first fully resolved by DNA and error-corrected archives. In a technical footnote, Dr. Hollis wrote, STR profiles from 40-year-old sealed evidence were sufficient to identify 2 distinct individuals. This underscores the importance of evidence, preservation, and modern forensic technology in restoring justice. As Mendoza left the building that evening, Sacramento's sky glowed orange. Wind from the American River carried familiar damp air. She paused, looking toward Watt Avenue Bridge where it all began. In her pocket, the DNA report copy felt heavy as a verdict. 44 years, hundreds of files, thousands of investigation hours now distilled to one number, 1 inch 700 billion. With that number, Paul R. Whitaker was no longer a hypothesis. He was the man who shot Maria Elena Cruz. Mendoza knew by morning, when Prosecutor Marsh signed the charging document, Sacramento would wake to the first headlines. Cold case solved after 44 years. Retired music teacher charged with murder of teenager found in 1981. Early on the 24th of May 2024, Sacramento's sky was still misty. In the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office parking lot, 8 officers and 2 cold case unit investigators assembled, checking equipment. Detective Aria Mendoza led, holding Paul Raymond Whitaker's arrest warrant, signed by Judge Eleanor McKinney and certified by Prosecutor Elaine Marsh. The charge was clear: homicide, Penal Code Section 180, 7A. Murder, second degree, in the death of Maria Elena Cruz, 1980. After 44 years, the case finally had a name in the suspect field. At 6:05, the convoy, sirens off, entered Carmichael's quiet residential area, where Whitaker had lived for 3 decades. The air was cold, fog draping maple trees, everything calm as usual. Mendoza lowered her window, eyes fixed on the single-story red-roofed house ahead. Windows were shut, blinds half drawn. A faint kitchen light glowed. He was awake. "Follow protocol," she said quietly over the radio. At 6:12, 3 officers approached the front door, 2 circled to the back. Mendoza knocked 3 times. "Sacramento County Sheriff, we have an arrest warrant." Inside, a chair scraped lightly, then silence. Moments later, the door cracked open. Paul Whitaker appeared, in a thin sweater, hands trembling slightly, but eyes calm. Mendoza stepped forward, voice clear. "Mr. Paul Raymond Whitaker, you are under arrest by order of Sacramento County Superior Court for second-degree murder in the death of Maria Elena Cruz, occurring in September 1980. She held the warrant in front of him. 2 officers behind immediately cuffed his hands, turning him toward the wall. Mendoza read his Miranda rights slowly and precisely. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to an attorney, and if you cannot afford one, the court will appoint one for you. Do you understand your rights?" Whitaker replied softly, "I understand." No resistance, no questions, just a direct look into her eyes. Inside the house, the technical team spread out quickly. They seized a laptop, external hard drive, and a small wooden box by the piano showing signs of recent opening. All evidence was filmed and sealed. Another officer logged hair and nail samples per forensic protocol. In the study, the 1980 choir photo still hung in its faded wooden frame. Mendoza glanced at it, then quietly signaled the team to finish. At 6:45, Whitaker was escorted out. Neighbors began peeking through curtains. A woman called out, "What's going on? What's wrong with Mr. Paul?" No one answered. The convoy slowly left the quiet street, heading downtown. In the car, Whitaker sat still, hands on his lap, face expressionless. Mendoza noted in her log. Subject cooperative. No resistance, Miranda acknowledged. At 7:20, at Sacramento County Jail, he was formally processed, photographed, fingerprinted, medically checked. When asked his occupation, Whitaker said, "Teacher, retired." The response briefly silenced the room. At 9, Sacramento PD held an urgent press conference. Behind the podium, a whiteboard read in black, "Cold case solved after 44 years. Captain Neil Bowers opened. This morning, cold case unit investigators arrested suspect Paul Raymond Whitaker, 76, former music teacher at Hiram Johnson High School, in connection with the 1980 murder of Maria Elena Cruz. Modern DNA evidence, combined with preserved 1981 evidence, confirmed a direct link between the suspect and victim. This is Sacramento's longest-running cold case solved through forensic technology." Beside him, Detective Mendoza stayed silent, eyes on her file. When a reporter asked, "What reopened the case after 40 years?" Bowers gestured to her. "A student found a data error, and an investigator never gave up." Post-conference, an official statement went to news outlets. Sacramento County Sheriff's Office announces arrest in 1980 homicide. Cold case solved after 44 years. Suspect, Paul Raymond Whitaker. Local channels buzzed with the news. On TV, a brief clip showed the silver-haired man in cuffs, captioned, "Former music teacher arrested in decades. Old murder case." Meanwhile, at St. Andrew Lutheran Church, the community was stunned. Reverend Olson gave a brief statement to the press. "We're shocked and heartbroken. Mr. Whitaker served here nearly 40 years. We'll fully cooperate with the investigation." Some parishioners left that day's service quietly, saying nothing. That evening, in the cold case unit's small office, Mendoza watched the news replay. She felt no triumph, only the familiar weight of late-closed cases. On her desk, Maria Elena Cruz's photo taken at 17, smiling brightly in her school uniform, sat beside the DNA report, naming her killer. She whispered, folding the file, "We heard you." Downstairs, final booking procedures completed. Booking number 042422024, Paul Raymond Whitaker, entered Sacramento County Jail system. The status read, "Status, in custody. Charge, PC, 180, 7A. Murder, second degree, no bail." 44 years after Maria vanished, Sacramento added a new line to its justice history. A case thought dead, revived by technology, persistence, and justice that refused to stay silent. On the 25th of May 2024, less than 24 hours after Paul Raymond Whitaker's arrest, Sacramento County Sheriff's Office forensic team entered a critical phase, verifying the chain of custody and preparing evidence for court. All items tied to Maria Elena Cruz's case, bullet, guitar case, rag, and extracted DNA had to be checked, cross-referenced, and proven intact for over 40 years. Detective Aria Mendoza and Prosecutor Elaine Marsh sat in a closed DOJ Sacramento meeting room. On the table were 6 evidence boxes, labeled chronologically: 1980, 1, Coroner, 1980, 2, SPD, Evidence, 1998, Archive Transfer, 2024, Reopen. Beside them were logs signed by over 10 staff who handled storage. "If one link is off, Whitaker's lawyer will hit it first," Marsh said. Mendoza nodded, opening the first file. The top page read, "Evidence Receipt, the 17th of March, 1981. Lieutenant Mark Jensen's signature was clear. Description: 1 bullet, 1 fabric fragment, 1 soil bag, 1 hair sample, case JD 80-104. Below was a red coroner's office, received, stamp. 2 months later, the file moved to SPD evidence room, signed by Sergeant L. Cardenas. 17 years later, in 1998, All evidence transferred to Howe Avenue's new archive, logged on the 9th of September 1998, signed by Dale Perkins, still employed today. Finally, a 2024 entry confirmed Mendoza's reopening, with seals intact. No unauthorized openings, no torn seals, no losses. Perfect chain of custody, Marsh remarked. We'll emphasize this in court. No lawyer can challenge if signatures and stamps align. Mendoza added, I had DOJ scan the old seals with spectroscopy. The 1,981 red wax matches the county's reference sample, confirming no tampering. That afternoon, DOJ's forensic team explained DNA preservation for court. Dr. Jennifer Hollis, team lead, brought a 3D DNA model. She said, though DNA degrades over time, sealed in muslin and nylon, stored in a dry, cool environment under 30% humidity, mitochondrial and STR structures can last decades. These samples were preserved ideally by chance, as the archive's thick concrete blocked sunlight. On 2024 unsealing, we measured a DNA integrity number, DIN, of 4.7, sufficient for modern sequencing. She projected a microscope image, an aged hair, but nuclear DNA intact in the keratin core. This stability let us recover complete STR profiles from 40-year-old evidence. It proves SPD and coroner's office storage protocols inadvertently created ideal preservation conditions. Dr. Lindsay Huang, UC Davis DNA analysis lead, added, we used massively parallel sequencing, MPS, with nano-amplification to prevent gene loss. Victim and suspect samples were processed independently in separate isolation rooms, ISO 17025 certified. All molecular data was logged via Forensic Universal Analysis software. Raw data is stored on DOJ servers, with a copy sent to the court. She displayed a red-green graph, Maria and Whitaker's STR profiles, matching all 15 loci. Each locus is a genetic fingerprint pair. The odds of two unrelated people matching all 15 are 1 × 700 billion. No further interpretation needed. Mendoza, below, took meticulous notes. She knew these dry numbers were justice's backbone. No witnesses, no cameras, only DNA. And DNA doesn't lie. When the forensic team finished, Marsh stood. All data, graphs, and analyses will be submitted to the court as a forensic evidence report, per California Evidence Code Section 1280. I want you, Aria, to verify all evidence codes one last time before I sign off. Mendoza checked each sealed envelope. E14, bullet fragment, E32, hair sample, E80, 1, W1, fabric, Enotheus, V2, instrument-based swab. She signed the transfer log, dated the 25th of May 2024, and stamped, submitted to DA, certified chain of custody. Meanwhile, DOJ Forensics duplicated raw data onto an AES 256 encrypted drive, sealed in an anti-tamper electronic stamped envelope. This drive would be submitted to Sacramento County Superior Court as the original exhibit. A second copy stayed at DOJ for backup. That evening, when the file reached the Superior Court's evidence room, a clerk scanned the verification code. The system displayed evidence package SAC 80-104 accepted. Chain of custody verified from the 17th of March 1981 to the 25th of May 2024. Integrity 100%. Status submitted for court proceedings. In the cold case unit office, Mendoza received the court's confirmation email, forensic package received and logged as Exhibit A through G, in People v. Whitaker. She leaned back, gazing at the yellow-lit wall of files. It wasn't triumph, but relief. After nearly half a century, each piece of evidence completed Sacramento's longest justice journey, from river mud, through dozens of hands, across paper and magnetic tape eras, to the digital world, retaining absolute legal integrity. The next day, Prosecutor Marsh filed a motion for admission of evidence, with DOJ's certification and forensic reports. Her opening stated, The integrity of the evidence remains uncompromised despite 44 years of storage. DNA profiling provides irrefutable linkage between the victim and defendant. That morning, Judge McKinney signed approval to admit all DNA samples, STR reports, and physical evidence into the official trial record. The court system updated. Exhibits AG admitted for trial. Mendoza read the notice, offering a tired smile. 44 years, hundreds of signatures, countless seals now converged at one point. The chain of custody was closed, and Maria Elena Cruz's evidence was finally where it belonged. The courtroom, where truth moved from files to justice's voice. On the 10th of June 2024, Sacramento County Superior Court opened the preliminary hearing for People of the State of California versus Paul Raymond Whitaker. Courtroom 4 amperes was packed. Press rows filled with reporters from Sacramento Bee, KCRA 3, and the Chronicle. In the front, Detective Aria Mendoza sat silently beside Prosecutor Elaine Marsh, eyes fixed on the silver-haired man in the dock. Paul R. Whitaker, 76, in a gray suit, wrists still marked by cuffs. The gavel struck. Judge Eleanor McKinney declared, "The people of California, Sacramento County, officially commenced the preliminary hearing for case CR 2024-1560. Defendant Paul Raymond Whitaker is charged under Penal Code Section 187, a second-degree murder of victim Maria Elena Cruz, occurring September 1980. Marsh stood, voice firm. The defendant, then a music teacher at Hiram Johnson High School, was with the victim on the night of the 13th of September 1980. She subsequently vanished, and 6 months later, her remains were found on the American River's bank. Modern DNA evidence shows the victim's blood in the defendant's guitar case, mixed with his own DNA. All evidence, preserved for 44 years, is verified intact per legal chain of custody. The courtroom was silent. Whitaker bowed his head, hands clasped. At the prosecution table, Dr. Jennifer Hollis and Dr. Lindsay Huang DOJ and UC Davis, forensic experts, were ready to present. The prosecutor began with physical evidence. On a large screen, 1,981 crime scene images appeared. The skull by the river, fabric scrap, 38 bullet. Then 2,024 images. The blood-stained guitar case, rag, 1,980 strings receipt, and DNA matched to Maria. "This isn't a theory," Marsh said firmly. "This is science. And science doesn't fade with time." Dr. Hollis followed, explaining STR and YSTR analysis, detailing how Whitaker's DNA was found in aged blood on the guitar case, mixed with the victim's. She pointed to the screen's graph. 15 loci perfectly matched, error odds 1 inch, 700 billion. In other words, she said, for someone else to have this DNA, the world's population would need to be over 100 times larger. Next, the prosecution presented the crime timeline, reconstructed from witness statements, Harris Market receipt, and teacher records. Detective Mendoza took the witness stand, pointing to the chart. 9:10 p.m., Maria leaves school dance. 9:25 p.m., seen at Harris Market buying soda. 9:35 p.m., returns to music room per Whitaker's request. 9:40 p.m., disappearance window. 10:15 p.m. witness hears car leave Whitaker's home near Watt Avenue Bridge. This is the only window the victim and defendant could have met, Mendoza concluded. All physical evidence, DNA, and locations point to one place, Hiram Johnson's music room, the 13th of September 1980. As the prosecution concluded, defense attorney David Lasker, a seasoned criminal lawyer appointed for Whitaker, stood up. He began his counterargument. "Your Honor, we're discussing evidence from nearly half a century ago. DNA can be contaminated, degraded, or cross-contaminated during analysis. Moreover, the genealogical report only identifies distant kinship, not absolute identity. The Whitaker surname isn't unique in California. Can the prosecution prove this DNA doesn't belong to some distant relative of my client?" Marsh rebutted immediately. "We're not relying on genealogy to convict. We rely on a perfect STR match between the blood sample and the defendant's buccal swab. Genealogy was merely a lead to open the investigation. The victim's blood and his personal belongings is the direct incriminating factor. Lasker shifted tactics. What about DNA transfer through indirect contact? The victim was his student. The blood could have come from another object, or the sample could have been contaminated in storage. Dr. Hollis stood, requesting to clarify. Your Honor, the blood stains on the guitar case were fully oxidized, indicating they date to around 1980, ruling out modern contamination. The sample was taken from the inner lining, unexposed to the environment. For it to be there, it required direct contact, like placing a bloody object on the surface or wiping blood with a cloth. Both suggest post-crime behavior. The courtroom buzzed. Whitaker remained still, hands gripping the chair's armrests. Prosecutor Marsh moved to her final point, motive and concealment. She projected images from the St. Andrew church shed, where police found the rag, cleaning solution, and old guitar case. He kept everything, never discarding, believing time would erase memory. But science doesn't forget. The items he hid speak for Maria. When the judge asked if Whitaker wished to speak, he replied, "I didn't kill anyone. I taught music, not murder." His words sounded frail, out of place in a room filled with evidence. The hearing adjourned at 4 p.m. Judge McKinney ruled. After reviewing all files, forensic reports, and witness testimonies, the court finds sufficient probable cause to proceed to full trial. The preliminary trial is set for the 1st of August 2024. The gavel struck 3 times, the courtroom doors opened, and reporters rushed out. That evening's news headlines read, Sacramento Court. Former music teacher to stand trial for 1,980 murder DNA evidence deemed conclusive. Late that night, Mendoza left the courthouse, standing alone on the steps, watching lights reflect off the old building. She knew the legal road was long, but the hardest part was done. The truth was in the open. Whitaker could deny, his lawyer could doubt, but the DNA numbers didn't, and they would be the strongest witness in the upcoming trial. On the 1st of August 2024, Sacramento County Superior Court opened the final trial for People v. Paul Raymond Whitaker. The largest courtroom was under tight security, with 12 pre-selected jurors seated across from Judge Eleanor McKinney's bench. The air was thick, carrying the weight of 44 years of silence. In the front row, Detective Aria Mendoza watched quietly, her worn notebook open on her lap. Beside her, Prosecutor Elaine Marsh adjusted a 400-page file, every piece of evidence, DNA, physical items, and testimony ready. Judge McKinney struck the gavel, her voice calm but stern. The jury will hear final arguments before deliberation. Both sides may present in turn. Prosecutor Marsh stepped forward. The large screen behind lit up, tracing the investigation from 1,980 to now. The disappearance, body discovery, exhumation, DNA analysis, arrest. She paused on a photo of the victim, Maria Elena Cruz, 17, beaming in her school uniform. "This is Maria," she said slowly. And she waited 44 years to be called by her true name. Marsh faced the jury. "We've proven her blood was in Paul Whitaker's guitar case. We've proven his DNA was in that same blood. And we've proven this evidence was preserved intact for over 4 decades, with no breaks in the chain of custody. There's no coincidence, no genealogical error here, only biological truth, unchanging." She displayed Dr. Jennifer Hollis's STR chart. 15 loci perfectly matched. Then the guitar case, rag, and 1,980 strings receipt. These are traces of guilt of a teacher who betrayed a student's trust, acting when she refused to return for a private rehearsal. Dr. Hollis took the stand last, explaining briefly to the jury. The defendant's DNA in this blood has a 1 in 700 billion chance of random match, a number far exceeding Earth's population. The victim's blood indicates she was shot at close range, then moved in a container just large enough the guitar case could have hidden blood-stained items before he processed evidence. The courtroom was silent. Hollis's words landed like nails in wood. Marsh closed her argument. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we cannot bring Maria back. but we can give her the one thing she never had: justice. Paul Whitaker lived 44 years free, while his victim lay in an unmarked grave. Now is the time for truth to speak for her. As the prosecution sat, defense attorney David Lasker stood, calm but resolute. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't deny the Cruz family's pain. But a criminal case cannot rest on memories and technology. DNA doesn't tell a story, people do. And all we have is blood in a guitar case no one knows who touched over 44 years. Mr. Whitaker was a music teacher, not a murderer. The prosecution paints a compelling story, but compelling isn't evidence. Lasker reiterated, the DNA could be environmental contamination. Evidence could have been mishandled in storage, and no one witnessed the murder. He stressed, no eyewitness, no confession, no weapon. They only have data. The prosecution countered, and data is the most honest witness. The judge called for closing. Lasker turned to Whitaker, whispering, this is your last chance to say something. Whitaker stood, voice trembling. I didn't kill that girl. I don't know why the DNA is there. I only remember she came to the music room that night, then left. I did nothing wrong. His words echoed in the silent room. In the gallery, a middle-aged woman, Maria's sister, Lucia Cruz, sobbed quietly. Judge McKinney nodded, signaling the jury to retire for deliberation. The clock read 2:15 p.m. Mendoza sat, staring at the table. No one spoke. 2 hours later, at 4:28 p.m., the jury returned. The foreperson held a sealed envelope, stepping forward to hand it to the judge. McKinney opened it, reading slowly. We, the jury in People v. Paul Raymond Whitaker, having considered all evidence, testimony, and court instructions, unanimously find by a 12-over-12 vote that the defendant is guilty of second-degree murder under Penal Code Section 187A. Murmurs rose. Whitaker bowed his head, face unchanged. McKinney struck the gavel. The defendant is found guilty. The trial moved to sentencing. The prosecution requested 25 years to life, per the penalty for second-degree murder. The defense sought leniency due to age and no prior record, but the judge shook her head. Time doesn't erase guilt, it only delays justice. At 5:10 p.m., she delivered the sentence. Paul Raymond Whitaker is sentenced to 25 years to life at California State Prison, Vacaville. No parole eligibility. Officers tightened cuffs on his thin wrists, the click soft. Whitaker glanced at the gallery where Lucia Cruz stood silently. She no longer cried, her eyes holding an odd calm of someone who waited half a lifetime to hear guilty. As he was led away, Whitaker paused at the courtroom door, saying softly into the microphone, I didn't think she was dead. Then he turned, disappearing behind the metal door. In the courtroom, the judge noted, case closed, conviction entered, sentence imposed. Outside, late sunlight bathed the courtyard. Mendoza stepped out, taking a deep breath. Reporters swarmed, microphones aimed at her. She said briefly, we didn't solve a case. We heard a girl's voice that the city forgot. That night, 10 p.m. news aired. Verdict reached in 1980 Sacramento cold case Paul R. Whitaker, sentenced to 25 years to life for the murder of Maria Elena Cruz. After 44 years, justice moved from files to numbers, DNA, blood traces, and the lifted silence of those who waited nearly half a century for truth to bear its name. On the 20th of August 2024, nearly 3 months after Paul Raymond Whitaker's sentencing, Sacramento County Department of Justice released a 286-page special technical report titled Forensic Data Integrity and the Recovery of Lost Cases Lessons from the Cruz Investigation. The document not only closed Maria Elena Cruz's case, but opened a new chapter in California's forensic data management, a statewide review to prevent cases from disappearing again. At that morning's press conference, District Attorney Elaine Marsh, Detective Aria Mendoza, and DOJ Sacramento's forensic team sat together. Beside them was Emily Carter, the Sacramento State graduate student who first spotted the 2024 data error that reopened the case. Marsh began, we identified the root cause of why Maria Elena Cruz's case was forgotten for 4 decades. A 1,000 990 county code entry error during file digitization removed the case from name use, making it invisible to search queries. This nullified years of efforts by the Cruz family and police. She projected an original data table. The victim's entry read, WF SAC 8104, but the county code field listed San Joaquin instead of Sacramento. This small error misclassified the case to a neighboring region, disconnecting it from Sacramento's missing persons files. No one noticed, as the error's search interface only showed exact county code matches. The technical report detailed 3 main errors found in the review. Geographic identifier errors. County code. 37 cases misentered like Cruz's. Data disconnect between forensic agencies and local police. 54 files not updated to NamUs from original archives. Formatting errors during 1,999 paper to digital transitions, over 200 files unsynchronized due to old software failing to read special characters. Mendoza, part of the review team, spoke. The Cruz case is the tip of the iceberg. We found dozens of unidentified files with matching missing persons reports. Technology's lag hid dozens of lives, and now we're responsible for restoring them to the legal record. The report also assessed evidence preservation, noting that 1,990 seconds DNA samples could be 60% recoverable if stored at proper temperature and humidity. This led Sacramento County to partner with UC Davis Forensic Lab for a 5-year evidence restoration initiative, aiming to recover all pre-2000 archived samples. In the recommendation section, Dr. Jennifer Hollis emphasized, forensic data systems must undergo automated periodic audits, independent of human input. We've developed a new NamUs module capable of scanning and cross-referencing orphaned cases files without matching codes but containing overlapping DNA, disappearance dates, or physical descriptions. This module is set to launch across California in December 2024, later expanding to Oregon and Nevada. A key report component is the mandatory periodic review mechanism, named the Cruz Protocol. Every 24 months, all county forensic agencies must re-examine 100% of unidentified remains files, verify county codes, case numbers, and name use status. Submit results to DOJ and the State Justice Committee. The final clause stated, no victim's file may be deemed closed if any doubt remains about the data or chain of custody. After DOJ's presentation, Emily Carter was invited to speak. She had just defended her doctoral dissertation, Forensic Data and Lost Justice, the Sacramento Case Study, a 412-page work rated outstanding at Sacramento State, analyzing how data errors, paper systems, and lack of cross-checking delayed justice. On the podium, Emily spoke, her voice trembling but clear. When I opened that blurry PDF in the library last year, I didn't know a mistyped number could alter a case's fate. All I did was try to understand why white female remains, 1,981, wasn't in NamUs. It turns out, justice wasn't just delayed by the killer, but by the numbers we entered into the system. Below, Mendoza smiled, nodding slightly. She knew without that student, the case would have stayed silent. The technical report also addressed the case's societal impact. After Whitaker's conviction, hundreds of Sacramento residents sent letters to the police, requesting reviews of other 1,975, 1,990 missing persons cases. Within 3 months, DOJ reopened 17 unidentified files, with 3 identities confirmed via mitochondrial DNA testing. Concurrently, California's Justice Committee approved a $4.2 million budget for the Legacy Case Reevaluation Project, aiming to review 10,000 forensic files statewide, using the Cruz Protocol as the standard. That afternoon, the Sacramento Bee published an editorial titled, "The File That Time Forgot How a Typing Error Hid a Murder for 45 Years." It opened with an image of Emily Carter at her computer, faint old data reflected in her eyes. The closing quoted the technical report, "A data entry error hid the truth for 45 years." The Maria Elena Cruz case is not just a forensic science victory, but a warning that justice hinges on every detail, even seemingly trivial characters in a data field. That evening, at the Cold Case Unit headquarters, Mendoza closed the SAC 8104 file for the last time. She wrote on the cover, "Case closed, justice served, August 2024. Beside it was the new report, 3 times thicker, labeled Forensic Data Integrity Program, Active. Late daylight hit the wall, illuminating Maria Elena Cruz's old photo, her faint smile no longer lost amid erroneous codes. Below, a quote from the technical report was engraved on a brass plaque in the investigation room. A data entry error hid the truth for 45 years. But with one person looking back, the truth will always find its way home." Sacramento began an annual Memorial Day for forgotten files. A reminder that in the data age, justice exists only when humans verify what machines assume is perfect. The story of Maria Elena Cruz shows that justice in America today relies not just on will but on clean data habits, and the community and legal system's mutual accountability. A 1,990 seconds county code error pushed WF SAC 80-104 out of NamUs. Without graduate student Emily Carter reviewing Potter's Field, cross-checking the blurry, white female remains, American River, 1,981, PDF, and filing a public records request, the truth would still be buried. Practical lesson: proactively use U.S. tools. NamUs, public records, requests, cold case units when a loved one goes missing. Don't hesitate to pursue the process, as one email to the right person can start the machine. On personal safety, Maria's path from the dance, to Harris Market, to choir practice with Mr. Whitaker, and past the American River reminds us, always use the buddy system, share routes, stops, and return times. Schools, churches, and clubs need standardized duty schedules, cameras, and rules for private student interactions. On data ethics, the GPR examination at Potter's Field and mtDNA divided by STR, 1 in 700 billion error odds, are only effective with a 44-year intact chain of custody organizations. Storing files should regularly audit and flag anomalies, like Sacramento County's Cruz Protocol. Finally, the human factor. Perpetrators can be trusted figures, a music teacher. So a trust but verify culture must pair with mandatory reporting and independent oversight. Justice delayed is still justice, but with meticulous record-keeping, basic digital skills, and persistence, like Emily's, we can shorten the gap from loss to truth. Thank you for following the Maria Elena Cruz case, a testament that one person's refusal to give up can revive truth after nearly half a century. Subscribe to our channel to explore more forgotten files and the journey to justice in upcoming cold cases.